God be in my head and in my understanding. God be in my eyes and in my looking. God be in my mouth and in my speaking. God be in my tongue and in my tasting. God be in my lips and in my greeting. God be in my throat and in my singing. God be in my nose and in my smelling and inhaling. God be in my ears and in my hearing. God be in my neck and in my humbling. God be in my shoulders and in my bearing. God be in my back and in my standing. God be in my arms and in my reaching and receiving. God be in my hands and in my working. God be in my legs and in my walking. God be in my feet and in my grounding. God be in my joints and in my relating. God be in my guts and in my feeling. God be in my bowels and in my forgiving. God be in my loins and in my swimming. God be in my lungs and in my breathing. God be in my heart and in my loving. God be in my skin and in my touching. God be in my flesh and in my paining and pining. God be in my blood and in my living. God be in my bones and in my being. God be in my end and at my reviving. This is a prayer from the early 1500s, from the priest in the cathedral at Salisbury in England. And I don't remember when I found it, but somehow when I read it, I could feel this prayer. And it helped me to see beyond what is the obvious about who we are and what we think about on a regular basis. What I love about unity is that we look for the metaphysical after the physical. We know that there's always something deeper beyond what we see and beyond what seems to be evident here. What our physical eyes see, what our hands may do, our regular working, our walking, our sitting, our breathing, our tasting, our speaking, that everything has an energy, everything has a consequence, that there's no small thing. And I love that the prayer touches on just about everything in life. Even when it mentions loins and be in my swimming, which I had to look up, which is making love. That all things are blessed. All things are sacred, and that in the touch of someone, when we hug each other, there's so much more than when we touch. There's more than the physical touch. There's an exchange of energy. There's a feeling of acknowledging, of being seen, of being validated, of being treasured, of being loved. So there's more than just the physicality of the hug. The prayer says that in the eating, there's more than just what the taste buds are doing, that there's something else happening in there. And it, for me, called out the sacred in absolutely everything. That song we just listened to, Nearer Than Air, I think helps bring expression to that prayer. That God is absolutely so much closer than we think. And in unity, we believe that we can't be separated because the divine is us. We are inextricably joined. And I think once we get that, when we try to wrap our heads and our hearts around it, that it does make everything sacred. Everything. Absolutely everything. Every act, every word is a prayer. Every act is an act of love at different degrees. You know, I had some challenges this week and really was just in them and let myself feel and think about what they were about. Because, again, I knew that somehow there was something else underneath the problem, underneath the stuff that was going on. And there was a part of me that felt that physically. I had a visceral reaction to what was going on. I kind of felt it in my bones, and it made me tired. It made me feel heavy. And at some point, I came in from a day worth of stuff and just came in and laid down and just kind of stayed with it. And stopped thinking about it at some point and just lived with it. I think I lived into it. And even though it seemed difficult, I also at some level knew that I didn't want to wish it away. That there was even something sacred in those moments. I talk about this a lot because this is just life. It's just life. Stuff that happens every day. And the stuff happens every day, doesn't it? Yeah. Sooner or later, something shows up. And it's up to us to decide, do I just want to have my tantrum, which I do at times, or do I want to look beyond what's there and find the sacred in it? Even if the sacredness is that I surrender right here, right now, to whatever this is. Let go, let God. Somebody said it's actually easier if you flip that first and you say, let God, let go. Somehow the letting go is easier when we call in God first. A friend of mine said when I first was learning about the 12 powers, and we were talking about the power of understanding, she said the way that she thinks about that power is that God stands under everything. God stands under everything. No exceptions. The divine is in all things. And that, I think, is our ultimate challenge. And I don't know that that's an intellectual process. I don't think it's ever been for me to try to puzzle through and work it out through some calculation and make it add up to something. We were just talking about math right before service. And I said I have a love of math. That was my favorite subject in school. And unfortunately, life is not always like an equation that you get to add up and it gets to one answer. One surefire answer, and it can't be anything else. There are so many gray areas in life. So many degrees of understanding. So many degrees of pain. So many degrees of joy. So many degrees of awareness about something. And then we get to choose what we're going to do with it, if anything. A friend of mine was flying back from Kansas City yesterday, or thought she was. And it was about, her flight was at 5:50, I think, and around 4 or so, she found out that her flight was canceled. And she had another flight out this morning to North Carolina. And so she ended up renting a car and driving from Kansas City to Dallas yesterday evening. Arrived home at about 4 a.m. Hadn't been asleep because she drove the whole way with a group of other people. They were at a graduation in Kansas City. And stuff, just shows up. What are you going to do? So apparently there were some in the group who lost it when they heard about the flight being canceled. And there were a few tantrums that happened. And no, this can't happen. No, they can't do that. Well, yeah. Yeah, guess what? It's already done. Yeah. And so she said it was an interesting journey in that 7 hours or so, that drive, watching everybody react to that stuff. To that stuff. God be in the flight cancellation. God be in this car as we're all driving home for 7, 8 hours together in the middle of the night through storms. When they were in Kansas, she said it got dicey. And for a while, you couldn't see 10 feet in front of the car in the dark. Yeah. God be in the driving. Yeah. God be in the backseat drivers. Yeah. God be in the complaining. What do you do? I mean, it's just the stuff. It's the everyday stuff. Yeah. This prayer for me is an immersion in spirit. Being immersed in that energy. Without a doubt saying, I am always immersed in the sacred, no matter what's going on. Affirming that you're going to find God in everything, in the mundane things of the day. Getting up, walking around, walking from room to room, going out to get the mail, fixing dinner, cleaning the house, taking out the trash, cutting the grass, combing your hair. There are times when one of the things I love, and I think is one of the simple pleasures in life, is being able to be in a hot shower and feel that water just cascading over you. How it feels on your skin, You know, the little points of water hitting your scalp. And there are times when I just stand there and feel the water. Just for a moment. And then there are other days when I am in and out of the shower so quickly, and just going, moving in my day, not even thinking about it. Not even thinking about it. But it doesn't mean it was less sacred, it just meant I wasn't aware. I wasn't seeing it. So when we ask for God to be in the seeing, perhaps that is the third eye that they talk about, the divine mind that sees, that we see with divine awareness. When we're eating food, and I've talked about how I run through a meal, I'm a fast eater. And I've been in like a seminar and they talked about mindful eating. That would take me back like the starting meditation did, where I was just tortured for 5 minutes in the silence. That's what mindful eating would be for me. And they say take 30 bites. Chew 30 times every bite. I'm thinking, really? 30 bites, I'm done eating. Meal's gone. Whole plate. Clean. And if it was really good, and I've had bread, and I've even got stuff off the plate, and the plate looks like it never had anything on it.
I know, I was eating popcorn yesterday at the concert, and my hand was not even hurting at all.
Yeah. God be in the
I
popcorn.
was like, man, how does this hand not hurt? Because it was hurting like heck yesterday. I said, well, when I was eating my popcorn.
You went to the sacred.
Yeah, I did.
A lot of sacredness there.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
Man, it was looking perfect.
Which might be the point. I mean, because then if we're focused there
Yeah.
on the sacredness, the other stuff that gets in the way, like the pain, whether it's physical or mental or emotional, dissipates.
Yeah.
We're no longer aware because we are immersed in whatever that sacredness is. It might be the taste of the popcorn. It might be the water pouring over our heads in the shower. It might be being in the garden, weeding, and thinking about growth, and the color green infused in the flowers and the stems. It might be that when you're cleaning your home, you're grateful for having a place to lay your head and to be safe and to feel loved. It might be that when you're walking around, you are affirming vibrant health. And being able to move and have choices and to think and be aware of who you are and where you are. So many don't have the ability to be aware. There are people who don't, they're living some other kind of life.
Yeah.
Whether because of some physical problem or emotional problem, are not there. I've said this before, but when I watched my mother after she had her second devastating stroke, I thought about the fact that she had very little awareness of what was happening. Mental awareness. I do know at times she felt me because she would squeeze my hand sometimes. Or she would tap something to get my attention. So there was some level of awareness. But in the moment when I was thinking about something, I thought, what a gift that is right now. Because there's the woman that I love here next to me is unable to have a thought. Her brain was not working anymore. The sacredness was still there for her and for me if I was just willing to be aware. we immersed in spirit, in the sacredness? Does God show up for us in everything? No matter how mundane we may judge it. And what do we need to change in our lives so that we are aware of this immersion? So that you're so aware of it that you can't not see it. Like when I love when the first time I jump in the pool and I go under the water and I feel that water all over me, that kind of immersion. Imagine if you could feel the sacred like that all the time. If you were aware of this force field that's around us, this energy force field that's always there that we can't see, but you know it's there as you're just going through your day, from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you close them at night. What's the saying? We're not a drop in the ocean, we're the ocean in a drop. That kind of immersion. So I say dive in. Dive in with all your heart. Being willing to see fully the sacred in everything. God is in everything. Whether we choose to see it or not. The challenge is to resolve to see. And let yourself embrace it and enjoy it.